Okay, fuck it. Just start it. If the audio's fucked up, I will. It's a future fluid problem that we'll like fix it in post.
We'll
Fuck it.
deal with it later.
And if it sucks while like people are listening to this, I failed. It's fine. Embrace it. Learn from it. Grow from it. Welcome everybody to episode 2.
Of a brown conversation.
I literally told Clark before this, like, you introduced this episode.
Surprise.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Episode 2. What are we talking about today?
So this is such a weird segue. We're gonna be talking about dealing with pandemic grief. But before I want to like talk about or go into like the meat of our conversation, I want to kind of like shout out what's going on like right now in like the political climate and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a lot of anti-Asian violence towards the Asian community. I feel like needs to be addressed. I hope, like, obviously if you know us or if you're listening to us, that you know what our stance is. But to reiterate, fuck white supremacy. Fuck all that shit.
It's not that hard to not hate people. I don't understand.
It's literally not. And if you have fucking weird sexual fantasies about them, you could still be racist to them, you piece of shit. And
Anyways.
hey, yeah. I don't know if you can tell in our voices, we've had a bad couple of days, but we're not gonna murder 8 people or any people. We're gonna make sure we heal properly and go about our days without hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, short little snippet. We'll talk more about that later on, like, because it deals kind of connected to our topic, but we just wanted to address that first to get that out of the way because it's something very current and something that's affecting us. I think it affected me like yesterday. Yesterday's recording. This is like what right now we're recording March 18th. Yesterday, March 17th, when like
the news came out, but it was
everything.
the night before
that
it happened, so like the 16th.
Yeah. I was already having kind of like a schmeh day because of other stuff I'll mention in a bit, but just hearing that in the news and social media, it's just very draining for me. I don't know about you, but it's very draining for me to hear shit like this keep happening and everything. I see another like black man, woman, or queer trans person being killed in the news like almost every week, and it's just so tiring for me. I have the privilege of like turning this shit off, but it's just like it's affects me in an emotional way because I connect to that community, I connect to that person.
I mean, for me, it's kind of the same thing. I for the most part, kind of go out of my way to actually seek out the news and see what's going on. Not from singular sources, not necessarily from one bias or another. I'm checking everywhere. I'm just seeing Twitter, news sites, just anybody posting anything anywhere, because, well, that's the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But to see media and even like the police reports and stuff spin this as, oh, we can't determine whether or not this is a hate crime, blah, 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 this and that, when clearly from any reasonable person's point of view, it just looks like unabashedly racially motivated.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say that, oh, because I have a sex addiction, it has nothing to do with the fact that every single one of those salons was owned by an Asian person, and almost every single person they killed was an Asian person. It's like, oh, you can't just say it's happy coincidence. It's motivations and targets.
All right.
But
it's a loss of life. It's literally a loss of life, and when you downplay that loss, I don't even know how to say it, because just like it really sucks. When you downplay that loss, you downplay every violent act that's followed with that or preceding that.
It almost empowers their actions because now they feel like they could have gotten away with the motivation that they've never explicitly said, but was clearly implicitly there. I don't share names of anybody who commits things like these, stuff like that, but for the most part, if like, my God, you might need to clip this because now I'm
Yeah, we'll clip it. we won't clip it. I won't clip it. I was just leaving everything.
Leave me alone. It's been a long day.
But to kind of segue this, it's a loss that the community is suffering from a lot.
Right.
And it's a loss that every individual that is like so passionate about like our community is just suffering a lot. And that goes into like grief that we want to talk about.
Right.
And with the pandemic, it kind of created this loss of everything, a loss of normalcy, like of our lives, like living our lives remote and like limited like personal interactions, a loss of like some of our loved ones that we're going to talk about in a bit. And because of that loss, we grieve in so many different ways. And I'm coining this as pandemic grief because just like everybody is suffering and grieving in so many different ways, some problematic than others, but I want to address and kind of give light on it so people can be aware of that grief and kind of like find ways we can at least kind of like start a conversation of like how we can heal from our grief. Going into kind of like our personal grief, this pandemic has kind of affected me a lot in like so many different ways, only like just recently. In the beginning, I kind of just like continued my normal life and everything. You heard in our last like episode about us working in the pandemic, our kind of like work situation didn't really change, but we still had to be conscious about it. Even though that I was fortunate and privileged enough to kind of like not test positive or not contract any like COVID-19, my family back in San Jose was not, and most of my relatives got contracted with COVID because most of them work in the healthcare industry, and unfortunately because of that, my Lola mommy, who have you seen post and in our video to kind of like that we honor this project for, unfortunately passed away this past January due to COVID. And it's hitting me now because it really sucks, because just like I think like the pandemic and the loss of life is not like, those stacked together is definitely a painful process to kind of like to process and understand, because I didn't get to see her in her last moments. I didn't get to say goodbye. I weren't able to spend the holidays with her or see her in her last moments, and that really sucks. And it sucks that like the funeral was just like a month and a half in advance because everything was so booked. And yeah, and the pandemic, just because of everything is so hectic and heavy, that literally some like I apologized to her at the funeral and saying that you weren't the priority in my mind, because the pandemic pushed my like survival to like the forefront of everything, and I had to focus on that only. And I was having a bad day like today and yesterday because of just dealing with all that grief and everything, because it's just resurfacing. It's never linear. And so yeah, we're definitely gonna clip this. This is very heavy.
Woo! Yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's why we're talking about this, right?
Exactly. That is my experience with this whole thing. Because it's a loss of something that I loved so much, and then I can't talk to that loved one anymore, and I can't really like heal in normal ways that like people like usually say. Is just like, oh, go out with friends, oh, freaking like do hobbies you want to do, like explore, do it, like find yourself. I can't like do that. I can't do so much in the context.
Where? Show me.
In the contents of my own room and my spaces, and to be like COVID conscious, I can't do much of that, and that really sucks. Because of this like so many like level of grief, I and other people have to find new ways to heal in this environment. And it's really hard, and like the grief of the loss of my Lola added to the pandemic grief of the loss of like normalcy in my life is just kind of like stocked onto everything. It is raining right now. Hopefully this mic does not pick it up. My roof is very thin and you can probably hear all of it.
Or unintentional mild ASMR for those of you who are into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. Free content. You're welcome. Patreon.com/brownconversation.
Eventually.
We'll see. But yeah, I am trying to find ways to heal. I think the best way for me to heal is to kind of carry and honor her energy and memory and carry that with me wherever I go, and to kind of like create a project for me or express myself in art in a way to honor her legacy. And this project is one of them. So, Lola, if you're listening, I hope you are. Please. I hope you're proud of me. And I hope that you can be happy and laugh at the things I say, and also learn from the stuff that me and Clark are saying. So yeah, that's my grief. Clark, do you want to share too? I talked a lot.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's as far as COVID goes and this pandemic, I lost an uncle to COVID a little bit ago, near the end of 2020. Healthcare worker, frontline, doing everything he can to, do the responsible thing and helping people wherever he can, because that was his thing, I got the news that he'd come down with COVID, and then he was intubated, and then all of a sudden it was like, he's gone. And I'm stuck up here in San Francisco. My whole family at home it just feels shattered. And, like, because of just all these restrictions on travel, and like Chris said, for the most part I was prioritizing my own safety and the safety of my family before anything else. I didn't really even get to process the fact that I had just lost a family member. Close or not, it's like, in any other situation, any other circumstance, I'd be on my way home, off to a funeral, off to be with my family, to grieve with them, but no, didn't get any of that. And I'm grateful to not have dealt with COVID in a severe way. I ended up contracting it, but all I had was a headache. But after a while, I started to realize I was really worried about my family, my direct family, getting it. But which sucked, because they actually all ended up getting it, which was a little intense for me.
Same.
But again, thankfully they all kind of made it out the other side okay. But all I could think about while they had COVID was, I'm not ready to say goodbye to somebody this close to me. I'm not even sure I'd be able to go down to say goodbye. That's pretty much it. I couldn't grieve. I couldn't feel the loss of anything, because I needed to make sure I wasn't going to lose anything up here. I was worried about losing everybody at home, but I didn't have time to actually think about what was already lost and the people that have passed. I also lost a baby cousin shortly after Christmas in January. It wasn't to COVID, it was just a freak accident, but same deal. Families in shambles, we don't know what to do. We just keep losing relatives left and right. But we can't be together, we can't mourn together, we can't even have a funeral. Grandma's brother my grand uncle
Mm-hmm.
had a stroke sometime in the end of last year as well. He's recovering at home, but again, just goes to the same circle of I can't be where I want to be to grieve, to feel the emotions I need to feel. And as far as healing goes, being confined to the space where I'm hearing the news, dealing with the news, doesn't really help. Like Chris said, it's hard to really just go places and get your mind off of things when this is kind of surrounding you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only person losing people who can't see. I'm not, the only one worried about their family getting COVID and stuff like that. This isn't a unique experience by any means, but that's why we want to talk about this. That's why we want to
Right.
bring this conversation up about, like, while we're dealing with this pandemic, the ways that we've been able to heal. And for me, this is kind of part of it, this podcast.
Yeah.
Being able to talk, not just with Chris, but to have this conversation out loud and to let other people hear it and let other people know that they're not alone in what they're feeling, that they can grieve and it's okay. And sometimes that's the easiest and healthiest way for you to heal, is to just listen to somebody or to have somebody listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You may not be able to be where you want to be, but if you can let it out, at least you're not holding it in.
Right. I think the worst thing that we can do for ourselves during this time is to be silent.
Right.
Is to not acknowledge that we're grieving, that we're suffering, because we end up doing things that might end up hurting others and hurting ourselves more. And I feel like what we talked about in the last episode of our Working in the Pandemic, that like, since we're exposed to everything and all like forms of this pandemic, whether it be basically everything bad we've experienced firsthand, and so we understand like how far, like, we know how far wait, hold up. Come on, Fluid. We know how bad shit can be, so we don't want to make it worse for ourselves or for other people at the very least. So when we see people just going out to bars, going out to freaking eating and everything, not wearing masks, you're making it worse for me and my family. That's how I take it as. So yes, not wearing a mask and shit is political because it affects the lives of so many people, especially BIPOC communities. So many people. And we're all grieving in different ways, but if we're not at least kind of like empathizing with others and making sure everybody around us is okay and not endangering everybody around us, that's the first step. And then it kind of like, I don't know, there are more healthy ways to grieve rather than just like go to a bar and like drink. Maybe, I don't know. It really sucks because just like normalcy and everything, but you know, why if you're pushing for something when that like, it's hard to like, how do I word this? Because I sounded stupid for the past 2 minutes.
Sorry, it's a rough episode, but
a lot of pain is coming out. But that's why this pandemic grief is really hard, because the ways that we really like use to heal and to like heal from our grief, we can't do that. Some people are doing it
irresponsibly.
Yeah. Fuck you. I don't care. Fuck you. Holy
I saw basically like a wear a mask sign. So I forgot where it was. Maybe outside of like a cafe or something. And they were like, everybody is someone. So put on a mask. And it's kind of been the message from like day one. No, it's like, wear a mask. It's not about you. It's not about like your personal freedoms, blah blah blah, this and that. It's about, there are people who are going to lose their lives because your irresponsibility is gonna cost them.
Mm-hmm.
There are entire communities of people out there who cannot deal with this pandemic the same way that Chris and I can, the same way that most people in San Francisco can. You cross the bridge, any bridge here in the Bay Area, and you're immediately dumped into a different county with completely worse conditions and not the same kind of COVID response that San Francisco or Oakland or Sacramento has.
Mm-hmm.
And those communities are having to deal with this grief and loss on a whole nother level, because not only are they not getting, the space that they need to be able to grieve, they're just not catching a break from this at all.
Mm-hmm. There's a side to every perspective in this and how it contributes to that. But I guess how we can escape from the cycle of grief is to kind of find ways we can heal more healthily. Express yourself in ways where it's not endangering others, especially in art form.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your healing very close and interpersonal within your close circle of friends, and not out in public, or I don't know, freaking going to fucking beach in Florida. Anything in Florida. Anything. Or lifting a mask mandate. I don't think that's a way to properly heal from your grief. Going back to everything. And there's always a freaking I always get these customers every time just I'm so tired of this whole pandemic thing. Why can't this be over? Well, we have to get there. We can't just, we have to process and kind of work our way there. We can't just be back to normalcy, otherwise it would just end up destroying us. And that's just how we deal with grief too. We can't just be there in a place where we want to be right away.
Mm-hmm.
We have to work our way there. We have to climb our way, walk our way. And some people can get there faster than others, but some people take their time, and everybody's on their own pace. But as a collective, we have to really work together and kind of work our way there. We can't just be there, no mask, party in the Florida beaches and everything the next day. We can't just skip from that. And I think some people kind of forget that. And so for people to kind of people who are grieving, people who are working out their emotions right now, I don't know what's happening. Some planet is in retrograde right now. I don't even know. But you have to work your way there to be the place where you're content or happy. And that place isn't permanent either. Everything comes and goes in waves. Everything is fluid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Roll credits.
Alright. Okay, end episode. But we have to work our way there, and where we can kind of heal properly. And I'm speaking very vaguely because I cannot speak for you in your healing process.
Right.
You have
Whatever
to find your own
healing
way.
is to you, at the end of the day, that's something you should be accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else is going to tell you how you're supposed to. Actually, the pandemic's telling you how you're supposed to grieve, because now it's kind of taking away all your options.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say that there aren't options. At least for me personally, what worked the best in dealing with the fact that I'm losing family members, that I'm worried about my family, is that as long as I'm doing everything I can to ensure the safety of not only myself but the people around me, then I can at least feel comfortable knowing that I'm not doing anything that's going to endanger my family or my loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And if most people start with that, just understanding that taking some responsibility on your own actions not only saves the people around you, but it saves your family, it saves your loved ones, at least from you being responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
The more people start to be self-accountable for their actions, then the less people stop losing their lives, the less people start contracting COVID, because people suddenly have a mind and understand that the things that they do are going to affect not only other people but themselves.
Right.
Again, which is why we have this podcast, is the fact that we're hoping that you start to have this conversation with yourself about, you know, taking control of your life and your responsibilities and not letting the outside world tear you down.
Right. Shout out to you for listening to this podcast, because, like, hopefully, I'm just hoping that you are allotting yourself this time to listen to this podcast in a space where you can kind of, like, do whatever you need to do while listening to this in the background, or, like, actively listening to this.
Or laughing at us.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
Memeing, whatever. You probably, like, are friends with us. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And giving yourself time to rest and to learn and be vulnerable a little bit. And I think having that accountability and, like, kind of space for yourself is just, it goes so far. And so whoever's listening to this, you're doing great, and we appreciate the hell out of you.
Mm-hmm.
So before we move on to, like, the next thing, like we said, me and Clark have lost families that we mentioned and haven't mentioned yet. And so to the 500,000 people in the United States, and to our families, and to the people who've died from white supremacists, we would just like to take a moment of silence for y'all. And we honor this project and this episode to y'all. All right. Let's take a deep breath. Woosah.
Woosah.
Okay.
Moving on to the next topic.
All right. Flip the page. Flip the page.
Wow, we have a soundboard since when? When it comes to grief and this conversation about the BIPOC perspective and stuff like that, it's really easy to get into this, like, tug of war almost with whoever you're arguing with. Like Chris and I just explained our grief, but that doesn't mean somebody doesn't have it worse than us.
Definitely.
Or that we don't have it worse than somebody else. This and that. But it's not our place to say that other people's hardships are invalid. You know, whether they go about dealing with their grief in irresponsible and problematic ways, again, that's on them. You know, it's not my place to start railing on people when that's not what I want people to do to me, you know?
We might not, I don't know, I can't speak for both of us. I may not agree with how you're going about, like Clark said, but I understand your pain, and your pain is valid. The way you go about it, I'm gonna, like, call you out for it.
Right.
But your pain and your suffering and your bad day, I understand. How you go about that in processing that bad day, I will chew you out for. I will hella chew you out for. Everybody is entitled to their pain, to feel their pain.
Right.
How? Wait,
but it's...
I'm so mad right now.
So everybody can feel, you can have a bad day. You can do whatever you need to do to help you get over a bad day, but it doesn't excuse violence. It doesn't excuse hatred. It doesn't excuse lashing out at people because you're having a bad day.
You can have a bad day. You can't make others have a bad day.
Right. And this isn't just to... this isn't just directed at that stupid dude who decided to shoot up a bunch of Asian spas.
Yeah, the white supremacists, yeah.
I mean, that's like the start of it. That's one thing. And, you know, a lot of that conversation is like, it's just like, it's like the invalidation of a struggle. You know what I mean? It's like when, like the Black Lives Matters movement, right? When somebody says all lives matter, that's a direct invalidation of the message of the movement as a whole. But it's the same Same way on like the other side of the coin, you know. You can't just say that you have it harder because you're brown.
Right.
Yes, do statistically we have are there things in place that institutionally will bring people down based on their race and ethnicity? Absolutely. I'm not saying that those don't exist, but I lost my thought.
I kind of see what you're getting at. It's just like that whole mentality of just like whenever people talk about their problems, instead of being empathetic, they be kind of sympathetic, like, oh, you have it, oh, it's okay because like kids are starving in Africa. That doesn't make me feel better. That has nothing to do with my problem. That sucks, but just like that's has nothing to do with the pain I'm feeling. That totally invalidates my pain.
Right.
I'm feeling. I could have like said that whole story about my Lola. Clark could have said that whole story about their family. And like some random third party comes in just like, oh yeah, I had like 5 family members die. I'm just like,
it's not a contest.
I was just like, okay, are you trying to one up us in our grief? You can't do that. Comparative struggle and comparative grief is, you shouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
Like, you can, obviously you can. No one's stopping you, but there's implications to that kind of conversation.
Right.
It kind of like drives disconnection more than connection itself. And yeah, it's so totally fucked up. Like instead of kind of like acknowledging the differences of like how we can like struggle, we should acknowledge like and listen to people's struggles and understand and like how we can like lift each other up. Empathy more than sympathy, because just like instead of like kind of like bringing up other concerns or other issues, why can't we just kind of listen and kind of take care of the issue that was presented to us and not bring in a third thing? And the only few times I tune into freaking like politicians and like whatever, like CNN, like any like Ben Shapiro shit, why are you bringing up random dumbass hypotheticals to an issue that was presented that has nothing to do with it? Just so you can kind of like feel like mentally superior, like, oh, I got you.
Right. Comparative struggles and comparative grief. It's just like we're all gonna go through it, right? You're going through it. I'm going through it. Our neighbors are going through it. Politicians are going through it. Third world countries are going through it. Everybody's going through it. And it's a lot. Everything's overwhelming. Everything's just a lot to take in. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't let that be an excuse for us to start being divisive towards one another. When people grieve, the only right thing to do is to let them grieve. It's not to invalidate their grief, It's really easy for people to be like, oh, that sucks. Your grandma died. I lost like half my family, this, that, and this. And it's just like, I'm sorry you lost your family, but I don't understand how that's supportive to me in any way after me just telling you that, like, I'm a mess right now. The last thing I want to hear right now is that you're in a bigger mess. Because now suddenly it feels like it's my responsibility to take care of that or something. But
now is it my fault that, like, because I said this, I brought that pain upon you? I'm just like, all right.
No, it's just like the point of me telling you that I'm hurting is that I want the space to hurt. When people anywhere, when communities of color are rising up and saying that they're angry and they're upset, the first thing you should do is listen. Why? Why are you upset? Not, oh, you're upset because of this? Well, I'm upset because this is going to do this to me.
Exactly. I think, like, in the whole, like, span of things, we can never truly understand each other's pain. We can never truly grasp what the full, like, pain that everybody's feeling. But the least we can do is try to be there for each other so that we can kind of, like, at least know what to do to help each other. I will never know the fear of walking at night as a woman. I will never know that fear. I will never completely, like, know how that feels. I understand that. It's the least that I can do, and like with my privilege, I can do at least something to kind of dismantle that fear in some way or another. Maybe in the future, maybe in like 50, who knows? But I can't do like nothing I will say will kind of eliminate that right away.
Right. When people bring up a problem or grief or like something that they clearly just want to talk about, I don't understand, especially like today, how the natural reaction to that is, well, I have it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes like it kind of goes both ways,
Right.
you know. Like Chris said, I'm not gonna know what it's like to walk home as a young woman of color in a weird neighborhood. You know, I'm also not gonna know what it's like to be a white family who probably lives an honest life, but they're being attacked on just the basis of being white. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who these people are. They don't know who I am. But if I'm listening, then I'm not being problematic.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm taking the time to listen to what they're telling me and addressing what they're talking about, then I know that they'll do the same for me when it's my time to feel that pain, when it's my time to grieve. In the same vein that we're dealing with Asian American Pacific Islander
Mm-hmm.
hate and attacks and stuff like that. It's really easy for any African American person right now to be like, oh yeah, what about us?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the conversation shouldn't be what about us, what about us? It's how do we stop what's going on right now? I just presented a very clear problem, you know.
Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, why is there so many people who are just like mad about these like anti-Asian violence, but bring up it like solutions that are inherently clearly anti-black? More police is gonna cause more violence to more like black communities, so that you can feel more safe. Like as like Asians, we suffer from this thing called the model minority myth. Shout out to all the Asian American majors and minors out there, because we've gained some sort of status of kind of whiteness and kind of being, I don't know, a better minority in a way. So we have some privileges over our black and brown siblings.
Right.
And so the moment we start being anti-black is the moment we start being something that's complicit and something that we should try to dismantle.
Right.
We become allies to white supremacy and never like allies to brown and black lives. And I feel like popping off on the current climate, I feel like this is something that we should kind of like focus more in, like instead. It's good to push for international solidarity. It's good to have that as a basis, but that shouldn't be the solution to kind of solving the problems. The solution is to like, instead of just like solely pushing like BIPOC people, that sounds weird. Black, indigenous people, or colored people. Sounds really weird. To BIPOC communities, to practice solidarity, we should also kind of like have dismantling white supremacy and capitalism and patriarchal supremacy at the forefront of this as well. Because like, lost my train of thought again. Wonderful.
Well, I think I know where you're going with it. It's this push for international solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
That's people can get confused. It's like, oh, I can just solidarity. I posted something on Instagram. Solidarity hashtag, right?
Hashtag yellow squares. Cool.
Yeah.
I listen to 88 Rising. I am so anti-Asian.
That's not solidarity. Solidarity is understanding what the struggle is and understanding what you're fighting against. As a collective, the idea is to dismantle what we call nowadays white supremacy, but really it's just I like to think of white supremacy not necessarily in terms of you're white, you're bad. I like to think of it as you're erasing color from culture.
Pop off on that?
Like, part of why I feel like all the conversations that we have today in the world kind of just fall apart is because we start to look to villainize one another. I'm brown, you're white, you're bad. I'm white, you're brown, you're bad. When really it shouldn't be in the lens of that. If you look at it just from an outside point of view, it's, I don't like your culture, it doesn't mix with mine, and I don't want it here. That's not what America's about. I think. Actually, I would argue that
that's definitely what America.
That's the entire foundation of America.
It's almost as if they kind of like went into like another person's like land and culture and kind of totally erased that from the whole continent, almost.
I'm glad you understood what I was talking about. But that's the point. That's what white supremacy is. It's this erasure of culture because it's not yours. You know, I'm not going to shit on a white family for wanting a single family home in a nice neighborhood, this and that. Absolutely, go do what you gotta do. But don't make that like that like white family, you know? That's what they want to pursue. That's fine. Don't push other people's cultures out of the way to pursue your own.
Yeah. How are you going to pursue that? Are you doing it in very toxic and problematic ways to hurt other people? Like how you deal with grief? That's where I draw the line, personally.
Right. If you're stepping on the way other people live and the way they deal with things and the way they see the world because it doesn't align with yours, you're not focusing on yourself. You're not focusing on your own life. You're just focusing on everybody else. So the only thing you're going to do is lash out at everybody else when things go wrong. It's so easy to start blaming other people just because their culture's not like yours, that when bad things happen to you, it's automatically their fault.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the way you've lived your life. You know? Oh, just again, like at the basis of America's founding, we're not big enough, we're going to go west. All these fucking brown people are in our way. What do? Let's give them polio. Fucking
kill them all.
Like, what is that? You know? It's just like, how in, like, any sane person's mind does that seem like the proper way to fix your solution? It's not something that, like, that just goes away. When people say white supremacy still exists, well, white supremacy still exists. This entire country was born out of the idea of, what is it called, manifest destiny, that who, for some reason, they feel like they need to conquer this entire land for the sake of freedom, quote unquote. Oh, let me enslave everybody on the way while I'm talking about freedom, you know?
As a brown person, I'm trying to manifest a better life for me so I can heal properly from my grief and my trauma. As a white person, you're probably manifesting your destiny. That's how I feel sometimes. So, again, I'm not trying to erase your culture and kind of make you feel bad about being white. I'm trying to like tell you that, like, hey, your entire like reason that you're here is based on violence and slavery and imperialism.
And just a reminder to all the white people here that claim they've got generations of family in America, they were immigrants too. Just saying. But I mean, that kind of, I want to tie this back to the point of why international solidarity is important and what it really means. Like I said, it's making sure that instead of erasing each other's cultures for the sake of our own, it's that we recognize that everybody, you know, we're unique. People have their own cultures, their own way of thinking. And the best way for us to move forward in solidarity is to hold those up, you know, to not let people feel like who they are is wrong. If I have, like, let me see. What am I talking? Like, oh, my partner, she's Latinx, right? The last thing I want to do is impart my culture and my way of thinking onto her and tell her that's the only way that we can be in a relationship.
Hear that? You hear that, huh? You should do it. You should do it, Datu's partner. Do it.
What I want for them,
sorry,
and the reason that we stay together and the reason that we're close is that we don't take away from each other's individuality. Mm-hmm. We try to hold it up. We try to spotlight the fact that we are our own people. We have our own cultures. And instead of shitting on them for being different from ours, we look at it from an objective point of view and try to understand that culture for ourselves.
Right.
I don't know much about Latinx like culture before I met her and her family and all the cooks that we work with.
Oh, shout out to them. Oh my
God, they
I love them so
but
much.
it's just taking that time to understand who they are as people, understand how their culture makes them who they are, and to see how proud they are of the culture that they carry. That's solidarity. Being with each other, not to bring each other down, but because we understand who we are, you know?
I'm glad that you kind of mentioned like other different types of cultures as well, because in the narrative of people trying to be kind of like anti-racist to support Asian communities, when you're supporting Asian communities, you should support all of Asian communities. Like Northern Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian, Western, every direction on the compass Asian, you should support that shit. Even like there's so many just like anti like brown, like dark skin like like conversations, but then like some of like the like anti-racist Asian like conversations, just like why, if you're not including black and brown Asian people in your dialect when you're trying to kind of like speak up for like Asian communities, then like you're not really speaking up for us at all.
Right.
Yeah. If you're not speaking up for Arab and Muslim or Indian Asian Americans, you're not speaking up for all Asians. You're speaking up to a minute population of Asian cultures.
Asian is a blanket term. Just saying. In case you didn't realize, there are literally hundreds of countries.
It's literally almost half the world.
That what we categorize here in America as Asian.
Because it's easier for people to understand that.
And if people don't understand what we're saying, that's one of those examples of destroying individuality for the sake of another culture. Where you say Asian American because it's easier, it's more convenient, whatever the reason is, because that's how you want to group those people, right? Here in America, that was how you say it. Why can't I find Filipino on my SAT when I want to mark my ethnicity? Why do I have to type Asian or other? You know, why do I have to be confused about declaring who I am in a country where I'm supposed to be free, right? No, immediately, for right out the box, they want to categorize you. That's one of those problems with quote-unquote white supremacy, institutional racism, stuff like that, is that destruction of individuality.
Yeah, even with like you mentioned, Latino culture. Like it's not just Mexican. It's El Salvador, Guatemala, like Puerto Rico, every little.
You know how many countries speak Spanish?
So many. We speak Spanish. What? We're not even. Lo siento. All right. There's so much that like people need to understand and kind of like do your fucking research before you speak.
Speaking on doing your research, to be able to research this at all is kind of an important deal.
Right. To have that access, to have that privilege is so important. And Clark, like you said, how like white supremacy is like on the basis of kind of like, I don't like this culture, I'm eliminating this, I'm instituting mine. This is exactly what's happening in Palestine right now.
Right.
There's so many like day-to-day violence that happens on my feed about Palestine that's just kind of like crazy to like think about. Like literally when like Biden was elected, they like the Israeli army kind of like raided like a Palestinian town.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm like misinterpreting information, I apologize. In the post, I'll probably post like links to like our YouTube video and everything. But what's happening right now is literally an erasure of a whole entire people. I remember a couple like months ago, people were saying Palestine's off the Google Maps and everything when it was never on any map to begin with. I jumped on that train too, and I apologized, and I like corrected myself and checked myself, and like I'm trying to learn from this. But if your dialogue of supporting Asian communities is not include Arab, Muslim, or Palestinian people, again, you're not doing anything right now. If you really want to be supportive of the Asian communities, you want to be supportive of every Asian across the whole entire world.
Right. If you need to go out of your way to, I'm not saying like drop everything and go work for the Peace Corps.
Right.
I'm saying that if you're gonna say you stand in solidarity with like Asian American Pacific Islanders, you're gonna stand. You say you're gonna stand with the Black community. You say you're gonna stand. You're gonna stand with Palestine. You need to understand that that's a collective struggle.
Mm-hmm.
All of those struggles, it's against the erasure of culture.
Right.
What's happening in Palestine between Palestine, those are brown countries.
Mm-hmm.
That's brown on brown violence.
Exactly.
It's not, like we say white supremacy because that's kind of just the face it takes now in the world we see today.
Yeah, but white supremacy is rooted in imperialism and like capitalism in itself, and that is endangering other countries around the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening in the Philippines. Hello. What computer? It's happening in the Philippines, happening in Palestine, it's happening in everywhere in the world. And we have to understand like how we can kind of like help these communities around the world, and that's what pushing for international solidarity means, is to show your solidarity with people around the world and make sure that everybody in your community that represents these places are safe and are also kind of like allowed to speak for their own like for their homeland.
Right.
I think as soon as you mentioned Palestine, I guarantee it, for people who are listening on Spotify or anywhere, I'm probably going to clip this because this will probably be taken down on YouTube. Literally any like information of Palestine will be demonetized, taken down from like any corporation, from Zoom, from YouTube, from Twitter, like almost everything. And this is why it's so important to speak on this. As we're speaking now, Arab and Muslim Studies at SFSU, the first college of ethnic studies to be in the United States, is cutting Arab and Muslim studies right now from the ethnic studies curriculum. They're cutting Palestine from the curriculum, and that's so important to kind of address right now. Because, like, it's literally what Clark was mentioning about what supremacy represents. It's erasing culture, erasing people, erasing history, erasing part of a people that exists today. For what?
And
for what?
If you're looking for some way to help, if you want to say that you're standing in support for all of these issues, it's institutes like your colleges, your high schools, it's where we get educated, quote unquote. The internet, like you said, YouTube will probably just knock this down because we mentioned Palestine. Why? If you want to help, the first thing you should do is make sure that people know what the problem is.
Right.
I refuse to believe that social media companies say they're going to be impartial platforms, because the second something is either hateful or controversial, they take it off. Mm-hmm. And that's actually not helpful to the cause at all. You're suddenly taking away eyes, you're taking away this view. If you're taking away the study of a culture entirely from a curriculum, who's gonna pass it on?
Right. I understand the importance of taking away like hateful speech and everything.
Right.
But when there's no like literal evidence of hateful speech, and it's literally just kind of like people advocating for their own issues, then what the hell is the purpose of that policy and everything?
Right.
And I'm not saying like for us, that's the purpose of this podcast, is so that other people in the community can speak up for their own issues and kind of like bring to light on that. People who are experts on that field to bring to light on that. And we're speaking vaguely because we don't know much and we're trying to learn more.
Right.
So as a resource. I'm posting it on like our stories on Instagram. And if you don't follow us on Instagram, please follow us on Instagram at Brown Kanbersasyon. There is a Zoomcast I'm attending tonight. Thanks. Shout out to GUPS, the General Union of Palestinian Students at SFSU, that are hosting Zoomcasts to kind of educate the masses about what's happening in Palestine, about different issues, about women in Palestine. And it happens every third Thursday of the month. That's happening literally later today, March 18th. But we will post the links on our Instagram and everything, and our link tree and everything. But that's a resource that we can utilize. That's a resource that you can utilize as a community. And if you have any more research, DM us on Instagram and so we can repost it for y'all. Because this is a platform not just for us, but for everybody to learn. For literally every brown every brown, black, indigenous person of color to speak up on that.
I mentioned this in a post too, but this isn't just our conversation. This is the conversation we want to have with everybody as a whole. Our biggest problem is that we don't take the time to just sit and listen to each other. The best way you can help not only yourself, but everything that's going on is to actually take time to listen. Attend a Zoomcast to figure out what's going on somewhere else. Just the fact that you gave them your ears is more than anybody could do on their own, just wrapping it up, it's kind of where I want to leave it. If we get anything wrong, or if you have your own opinions and you want to talk to us, please feel free to send us a message. We're here to listen. That's part of the point. We're not here to invalidate your struggle or what you're going through. We want to hear you, and we want to have a constructive conversation where we both come out on the other side better.
Right. Any kind of construction criticism you have for us, because this podcast is full with opportunities to say that, because for me speaking, I'm just all over the place right now, but please,
we'll do better next time, don't worry.
Exactly. That's how we have a conversation with that to move forward. Episode 1 is definitely not going to be the same as episode 200. Oh my god, 200. Oh my god. We'll do it. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Anyways, it's just an opportunity for not only us to grow from this podcast, but for the community to grow as well. And so hopefully our listeners, viewers, whoever you want to call yourself, can also grow from this conversation as well. With that,
closing it up, I guess. Like I said, if you're grieving, if you're hurting, it's okay. If you don't have any place to feel your pain, that's okay. Your struggles are valid, and the best thing you can do for yourself is to make sure you let it out. Don't hold it in. If you have anybody who's willing to listen to you, just let it out. And, if you don't have anybody to listen to, just tell us. Send us a message. Let it out. I'm not here to criticize what you're going through. We're just here to listen.
When we have the capacity for it, though. When we have the capacity. Also, when you ask other people, this is my ending note, make sure you ask them their capacity for it, because sometimes people ain't ready for it. People are doing with their own stuff. But as long as you're transparent and ask for people for their capacity or energy level to take this information, because information for if you're doing with something heavy, obviously it's probably gonna be heavy for other people. So make sure you're not just dropping a freaking weight on them. Make sure they're ready to catch that weight for you. And if they're not, that's okay. You can come back another time.
And if you have the capacity to hear somebody out, please do. You probably help them a lot. But yeah, I think that's my notes for for this mess of a podcast. But
it's okay.
Here we are.
Art is a reflection of life, and we are both messes. But for me, ending it out, give space for yourself. Listen to yourself more. If people aren't around you, maybe ask yourself questions. Do that mirror activity we always tell you to do, and kind of talk to yourself. not in a crazy way, but in a healing way.
Yeah.
Oh, where was I gonna end it? Oh my god, I totally blanked out. It's really the home stretch right now. I'm just like, all right, I'm just a mess this whole entire podcast. I guess my last thing to end off is forgive yourself more, and I know you can do it. And after a while, shit just doesn't get better. You just find better ways to heal from like the shit that's going on. And maybe like in a couple of days you'll feel better, and when you feel better, smile. You deserve to smile. And with that, thank you for listening. I'm gonna get ramen popsicles.
All right.
And a better mic.
Well, y'all, remember, change starts with a conversation. A conversation with yourself. Conversation with your friends and family, and eventually the world at large. In that order.
Hopefully.
So, hopefully, yes. Yeah. Don't expect to go shoutcasting to the world and expecting somebody to listen when you're not listening to yourself. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Hope you have a nice day.
It's been
a brown conversation. Damn, we said we weren't going to do that.
You said you were going to do that. Ugh.